Cloud and it's recording. And now I'm gonna broadcast to all audiences, and we're live. All right. So someone's here.
Oh, I haven't pulled the participants up.
Okay. So we have 19 people joining right now. All right.
Hey guys, say hello and where you're from.
Hello, everyone. You can there's a chat section right below, and if you click on that, you will be with a pop-up with a chat, and you can start talking there. Where you're from, what you're expecting from this. D'Angelo, I think I know him. I think I went to school with him.
Hi Juan. Hi Mohammed.
Hey, Venezuela.
Hi Alona. Hi Kumar.
A lot of people from Venezuela. Awesome.
Hi MJ.
Iran, Spain, San Francisco, Iran, India.
Hi Alvaro. Julio. Cedric.
Mexico, Finland. Oh, Finland. It's far away. If this is your first data science live session, just please type yes, so we have an idea how many new people we have here right now. How many new people we have here right now? So we have one yes, two. Okay, almost everyone is new. Okay. Okay. So
oh,
we're gonna
Uganda.
wait a second. Great. We're gonna wait for like 2 minutes for people to keep jumping. In the meantime, if you're new here, this is a collaboration between Kristen and I, where we're creating different types of videos for you with the questions we hope we got answered before, but no one answered it to us. And we had different sessions before about SQL, about getting jobs as data scientists. You can find those online in datascience.com. Sorry, datasciencelive.com. In there, you can find the videos and the past videos we've done. And so the topic for today is going to be an interesting piece on our experiences and transitioning from academia to business. And as you may know, data science is a business slash scientific area. So this is like the plan for today. I hope you know who we are.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Yeah, we're Kristen. I'm Fabio. I'm from Venezuela. Kristen is from the United States, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Very much.
Cool. So I think we can start doing this right now.
Sure.
Okay. So if you have any questions, please don't put them in the chat section. There's also a Q&A section right below too, where you have your options, your tabs. There's a Q&A section, and in there you can start asking your questions. If you have no audio right now, I think you have to reconnect. Maybe just try that. Sometimes that works, because I think people can hear us. If you can hear us, please say yes. Okay, cool, great. All right. So if you have a friend that couldn't be here and you want your boss, your mom to see this later, just remember that this video will be available soon in our webpage, datasciencelive.com, where you can rewatch it if you want. All right. So let's start kicking this off. So first, I think we need to talk about what we studied in college to have so you can have an idea where we're coming from. So Kristen, if you can start with that, please.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in statistics. And so I had learned about regression and classification and lots of algorithms in grad school. And when I got to business, I wasn't sure exactly. I definitely needed somebody else to tell me what type of application I was going to be using. And actually, I didn't learn time series analysis in grad school, but when I started working, that was what I was doing. And so I was only doing time series analysis. And in my second job as a data scientist, it became more general. And I was doing decision trees, I was doing logistic regression, and I still, I'd hear about the data and the problem, and it wouldn't be obvious to me that, like, oh, this is something I need to use a decision tree for. I don't know if it should have been, or if, other people would have thought that it was obvious with the same background, but I was really happy that, as a person in the beginning, I had a boss that was knowledgeable about all these algorithms and where to apply them. And now, 9 years later, if I see data, I'm like very familiar with the type of algorithm I'm going to need that's appropriate to solve that problem. But when you're in school, you learn, this week we're going to talk about Poisson regression, and this week we're going to talk about this, and this week we're going to talk about this other thing. And your homework assignments are specific to that thing, and you're handed data that's going to work for that scenario. And I had never been in the position before where I had the data and I had to figure out the correct scenario for that data.
All right, cool. So from my side, I am a physicist. I studied physics I have a bachelor in physics, and I also have a bachelor in computer engineering. And I only had one class on AI. It was very basic, and it was only like the grasp of the topic. Hey, this is AI. These are the main papers from Turing in 1950. And so I think my interest became first machine learning before knowing about what data science was actually. And when I was studying machine learning, and I think you can be with me here, I was doing like Andrew Ng's course and Coursera courses and all of that. So what my perspective of the area was, you're gonna be held at some data, and with a specific thing to do, you'll have to do it, and you have to create a model, tune it, evaluate it, and that's it. I mean, that was what I thought it was. Then I think my first experience was in Venezuela, working as a data scientist. So the problem was not clear at all from the business side. And this is one of the first like shocks to me. It's like, so I studied physics, I studied like engineering, I did my master's in physics. So I was like used to have a very well-defined problem to solve. Because, when you're in a test, they're not gonna just give you an overview of something and magically you have to solve a problem. They will give you the exact tools you have in your hands to solve a problem. Like, this is something, this is the way to do it, please solve it. So I think that was my first shock, was going into the business, and they didn't have a clear idea of what they wanted. And so it was very hard from my side to understand their goals, what they really wanted for us to do. And even though after having that, and after a series of conversations, it was still not clear to me, as just Kristen said, what should I do? Because I mean, I have this problem and they want to do this, but when you're learning, you're actually learning in topics. Okay, this topic is logistic regression, linear regression, k-means, all of this. And you have an idea, okay, k-means is for clustering, logistic regression is for classification, and all of that. But you don't have a clear point of view or on what you really need to do to solve a business problem. It's not the same. So I think we can just change now the conversation. I have an idea for, my first shock and Kristen's first shock maybe. Maybe we can start discussing right now, Kristen. What was like the hardest part for you when you graduated? I mean, I know we mentioned about not having a clear path to solve a problem, but what was your like the hardest part you had when you were transitioning?
Yeah. So actually, now that I think about it and listening to you speak, in my master's degree, all of the data was around, premature birth due to smoking and the things that, there's lots of studies on, like peer-reviewed studies. And so it was lots of, death, things that cause death. And then all of a sudden you get into the business and you're worried about lifetime value and optimizing revenue and conversion. And in the utility industry, it was looking at load and stuff, and I didn't understand anything about the business model, or how that data came together. Because before it was all like, okay, we have, these moms who smoked during pregnancy, these moms who didn't smoke during pregnancy, and let's look at that. And so just I had never heard the term lifetime value, and I had never thought about, because when you're handed data sets, you're handed data sets with, we collected, in the sepal length data set, it's like, we know the length of the iris, we know, and here it was, okay, well, we need to collect the data that's relevant, and nobody's told you necessarily what the relevant data is, or maybe it's more of a discussion, and I had less to add to that discussion than I thought. I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I don't know what lives in our database, like what data do we have available. And like eventually you start to get it, but in the beginning it's sort of like, what is going to have an effect? I don't know, looking at a lot of correlations.
No, yeah, and I can relate to that. And one of the other things that happened to me, and this is maybe basic for some people, but was getting used. I mean, this is what's one of my first and hardest things to get used to, is to having so many meetings. And this
Mm-hmm.
is something that's still happening today. I mean, and if you're working for a company, it's happening to you maybe. And you're not used to this because, I mean, when you're doing your master's thesis, maybe you have some meetings with your supervisor, and they're not the same. And when you have meetings about a topic in school, they're not the same. And because some of these meetings have a very specific goal, and you need to take advantage of the time you have, because some questions here may be the most important things for you to actually create and solve the problem. And I didn't know what questions to ask in the beginning. I was like just hearing like business people talking about something, and I was like, okay, this is what they want, and this is thing, but I didn't know how um, to like tell them, hey, this is what I need from you to tell me so I can solve your problem. And this happened to me with some experience and in working. And you also have mentors. Maybe, as Kristen said, having a good boss is very important in the beginning of a business job, because you need someone who has some kind of experience that will tell you, hey, this is the things you need to ask, this is the thing you cannot ask, and this is one of the other things, how to behave in meetings, because you're used to have like a very freestyle, in academia, you're with your friends and stuff. And sometimes you have meetings with people you have no idea who they are, but you know they're important in the organization, and you need to be there just listening to them and thinking, I cannot mess this up. It's like I cannot ask some question that it will be weird for them, or maybe you're not allowed to talk about specific points of projects just ahead, to not create false expectations for them. And these are the things you have to be learning and learning and learning, because sometimes when you have all this knowledge in your hands, like, okay, I just finished 4 Coursera courses and I have my GitHub repos and I'm doing all of these different things. You have like all this knowledge in your head about neural nets and all of that. And you want to solve everything with the hardest things. And you're talking to them, yeah, this is possible. I've seen an article, people doing it in Google and in Facebook. This is very easy to do. But you really need to understand that when you're starting in a new problem, you need to start from the very basics. And you need to be able to tell the bosses, hey, this is like my first approach. This is the first thing we need to do. We need to understand the data. I don't know what you want to do, clean the data, whatever. But creating false expectations from the beginning is a very, very big issue. You need to learn how to talk to business guys, because they will listen to you, and they're paying you a lot of money. So they want from you the best. And if you're talking and talking about the best solutions in the world in a very, very short um, amount of time, when you have no experience, maybe you will create false expectations. What do you think about that, Kristen?
Yeah, no, I wrote down a note while you were talking. The expectation from the business is a big thing because in the beginning, if you asked me how long it was going to take me to do something, I would have given you an answer that was like wildly wrong. And nowadays, if I'm like right now, I'm working on a large segmentation. And so I will send out a project plan and I will say, okay, I'm going to give myself a month just to get all the data together. And I'm going to give myself 2 weeks just to clean the data. And I'm going to give myself another 2 weeks just to do feature engineering. And then I'm going to give myself 2 weeks just to come out with the first set of model output. And then I'm going to give myself another 2 weeks to iterate and make any changes to my model, and I will spell that out so that people have an idea of how long it's going to take me. But yeah, I think a lot of times, and I see it in direct reports I've had too, people will say like, oh, I can have this to you in 2 weeks. And the answer is, no, you can't, because meetings come up and other things come up, and, you'll get a request for something that's maybe higher priority, and you don't want to, every time someone says your name, have that, making it be one more thing that's going to make it so that you don't miss your deadline. Like when I give a timeline for something, I am maybe being like overly padded, like I'm padding the time a little bit, but at the same time, like I know I'm going to meet my deadlines because I like put extra time in there. I just saw an interesting question from Fernando, and I thought maybe we'd just like pull that in, be a little bit more, nimble this time. But he said, have you ever felt that, it's difficult to jump industries, basically? So if you work in finance, can you not jump to pharmaceutical? Is this barrier a common thing? So for me personally, I have not found that as a barrier. And I can see how somebody who, is maybe getting their first job might be nervous that like, oh, if I go into healthcare, am I going to have to be in healthcare for the rest of my career? And so I started in the utility industry. I moved to the healthcare industry, and now I'm in e-commerce. And so personally, I haven't found it difficult. I just need to, when I'm applying to a position in e-commerce and I came from healthcare, I was focusing my resume on the things that I knew, right? Because I didn't necessarily know the business model. I didn't know everything about the domain, but I could talk about the things that I've done and the value that I've added, and a lot of those skills are transferable. And so I would focus on the skills that are transferable that would help me get over there. And I once had a boss, actually. So when I was working in healthcare, my boss said, you moved from the utility industry before that, right? Because I'm 35. So, and I finished my master's degree in 2010. So I've been doing data science for 9 years, but before that, I had also had jobs, and my boss was like, you need to pick an industry. If you want to be successful, you should, really be able to go deep and become a subject matter on something. And you know what? That just hasn't been my experience. I've been able to get more responsibility and continue to progress my career, even though I've kept hopping industries. And, the next job that I have may not be in e-commerce, and I don't limit myself at all. Like if I see something that's really interesting, or, if something came along and it was something that was going to give me an opportunity to like really have an impact on society, I wouldn't be like, well, you know, I've spent the last 5 years in e-commerce, I can't do that. So yeah, so I thought that that was a really good question, and I wanted to
Cool.
answer that.
Okay, so going back, I think I want to touch 2 points here. I think the first one was very important when you mentioned deadlines. And this is one of the hardest things of being a data scientist. Be able to set realistic deadlines for yourself and your team to do something. And this is something important because you need to have a methodology, and you need to have a way of solving problems, because if every problem for you is a new world, you will have no idea how to set the times. And if you like it or not, people will want deadlines. I mean, you cannot say to your boss, hey, you know, I'm gonna need an infinite time to solve this problem, you know, because you
I'm
have no have to wait.
agile.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait because I have no idea. And I mean, this is okay sometimes in academia, because when you're doing your master thesis or your thesis for rather in your bachelor degree, you know you have 6 months or something like that, right? But you really have you're learning in your path. I mean, it's very hard to create at that time. Hey, I'm gonna do this for 1 month and these 2 weeks and these 3 weeks. But imagine that every day of your life, because this is you need to have a way of solving things, and this is an important part when it comes to the scientific part of data science that I've been mentioning in several posts and podcasts and articles. And this is what I believe: you need to find a way of solving problems that works for you and your organization. I mean, and I've been seeing a lot of different organizations that I've been working with that they're using Scrum right now, and they're using Agile stuff to solve their problems. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. They just don't work. And that was one of my other shocks, because when you start in physics, you have no idea what's agile, and then you just are in a bank, and everyone is expecting you to be doing stuff in sprints, and you don't even have an idea what's a sprint or a product owner of a product manager, and it's all these different words around your life, and you have no idea what to do. So before going to the next topic, I want to mention one of the most important things here is you have to continue learning every day. And this is the only way of actually being a good data scientist. This is a very new area with a lot of expectation from everyone. And because if you want the job and you know they're gonna pay you a good amount of money, they're gonna expect a lot from you. So they're not gonna expect to you to just be there and just magically solve a problem. They understand you have a process, but you need to understand your process too. And you need to be able to understand the new topics. I mean, and this is my second topic: transitioning from area to area. This is something that will happen to you no matter what. I mean, I think there's a very few data scientists out there in the world that have only worked in one area. I mean, most of us have been working in retail and banking and housing and all of this. And the only, I mean, the thing that worked for me in the past was going hardcore on this subject. That means if I'm going to work in a bank, I need to understand what's a bank, what the bank does, what's the position of this bank in this country, in the world, what are their areas. I mean, you have to go there and just do your research. You have to do your research, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, one of the things that may be hard in the beginning is that you don't want to look like you're a fool, or that you don't know stuff, and you don't want, because you have so much pride, you don't want to ask people stuff. This is the worst thing to do. You need to be humble and just ask your boss, hey, what does this area does? Do you have a document that tells me about this product? Do you have a presentation that was discussed last year when you created this model? And all of these questions will be, I mean, they will be your backup as your domain knowledge for this job. And you can totally change widely what you're doing in data science, because the core is the same. The only difference here will be you have to do research again and again and again. And for your first job, I mean, if you want to do your first job in data science and it's in business, I think if you have the chance, choose something that you like. Because I mean, if you hate banks for some reason, you say, they're the evil in the world. Maybe there's people that thinks that in you're working in a bank, you will not have the will to do your research because you hate them. So when you're starting and you're transitioning to business, choose something you think you like, you think you will have the will, and you will be happy reading about in blogs, articles, newspaper, and it's going to be so much easier for you to transition from school to business.
Yeah, and guys, if you want to start asking your questions in the Q&A, that way we'll have them when we're ready to start taking questions.
Yeah.
And I just saw another one come up. Besides a college degree, what should I learn? For example, SQL, Python, etc. SQL, absolutely. That's the number one thing that I recommend before you learn anything else, because if you have SQL, you know how to, like, on day one, you're going to walk in and they're going to say, here's your data warehouse where you're going to be getting data from, and someday you may be hooking Python up so that your SQL queries can go directly in and pull the data in, but that's still writing a SQL query in Python. So you have to understand relational databases.
Oh,
And
we have that webinar. If our latest webinar was on SQL, so if you want to see, we Kristen and I created some examples to connect with SQL with R, Python, and Spark. So if you want to see how we do that, just go to datasciencelive.com and you'll see the last session.
Yep. Yep.
But
so
I
as
think,
far as asking questions, what you were talking about, asking questions of the business, I just want to put it out there that as I have progressed in my career, I am now like shamelessly able to ask things that I think might be really dumb questions, like really, really dumb. And you know what? Like, I ask them. And especially like even things like, hey, how come this open rate has, looking at open rates, obviously a rate should be a number between 0 and 1. We had negative values in it, and so I had found that actually something was wrong with that calculation. But a lot of times you may be uncovering a bug that people don't even know about. And also too, like, there's just no shame in my game anymore. Hey, I don't understand why this is this, and like, it's an opportunity to learn. Nobody thinks you're dumb. And we all just move forward. So just the more comfortable you get, just making yourself vulnerable, putting yourself out there, asking those questions that you have, it's just going to make your life so much easier. Because if you continue to go on with things that you don't know about, that you feel uncomfortable asking, it's just going to be this thing that you don't know for longer. And it may be something that is really relevant and needed for you to solve the problems that you're solving, to have that understanding.
One question from you here, Kristen. I think one of the things that may happen to people too is that they're maybe afraid because, I mean, what was your experience? Because when you're studying in school, you don't have shame to ask anything. It's like, what's this? I have no idea what you're doing, right? but but then um, you're if you're an introverted person, it's like you're not willing to. I mean, you don't love doing presentations, or maybe you don't love being with someone else all the time in a team. And teamwork is one of the other things you need to learn how to do, because if you were a loner in school, that's okay. Maybe you liked it, but there's no way you can be a loner in business. You'll need to have to be working with a lot of different people. And I mean, my question for you was, what was your experience when you were entering in a new job in business? How did you like change the way you thought maybe about things to be able to relate with people and talk with them and ask more questions? I mean, what did you do there?
Oh man, it was so scary. Like, it was honestly so scary. So if you're out there and it seems scary, I identify, and I was there. And I just remember sitting in meetings and like not asking any questions, because these would be like senior leadership meetings. And I got, I finished my degree, and I was maybe 27 years old or 26 years old at my first data science position, and everyone was like 25 years older than me, and that was intimidating. And since then, I've worked at companies where the majority of people actually are my age, or maybe now it's just that I'm old. But it was so intimidating. And I think for me, it was easier to just start asking questions of my boss and getting clarification after the meeting in a setting that was one-on-one, before, and nowadays I can speak up in an area where people are very senior, and I may not agree with the things that they're saying, but I feel comfortable being like, yo, that test design is messed up. Like, messed up. Whereas, years ago, I would have just looked at that and been like, whoa, and then walked out of the meeting and been like, whoa, did that seem right to you? Did that seem right to you? I don't know, because you're going to hear a lot of things from areas of the business, and they're thinking about analysis, and a lot of times they'll come to you and they'll say, you know what, we want this data. And eventually you will get to the point where you're comfortable being like, no, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the question you're trying to answer? But there may be times where people come to you and they say, you know what, we just want the average sell price, and we want the, quantities people purchased, and like all this different data, because, we want you to do an analysis on these things. And it's like, no, wait a second. What are you trying to solve? Because I may be able to help you more. Because the other organizations in the business, they think they know what it is they're trying to solve, or they think that they know the answer, and they just want you to get the data. And then you get them that data, and the answer that they want to find isn't there. And so they'll come back and they'll be like, actually, can you get me these extra pieces of data? And you need to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is the problem you're seeing? Is it a drop in conversion? Is it a drop in whatever? What are you trying to solve, so I can help you think this through, and I understand, and I can help, and I may have, additional data that could help you that maybe we're not thinking about, rather than just being the person that they come to and say, I want this data, and you say, here's your data.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I think we've mentioned this over the months, is like, if you're an introvert person, one of the things that will work for you is to start doing a data analysis, a data analytics position before going to data science, because in data analysis, you will maybe not have as much meetings as you have in data science, and you can transition, or you can just start as a junior data scientist. And these junior positions, they're very important. They're very important for your growth, because they will not expecting from you to change the world if you're a junior data scientist. So, and you have like less responsibilities. You can focus more on studying, doing your research, and you can learn from senior positions too. And this process you have to follow. And I know it sounds hard for people, and I'm not saying here, if you're a VP in like data in one company and you want to transition into data science, you will need to be a junior data scientist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you're starting here, and this is from academia to business, make sure you're starting in a position that you will have the freedom to study, to understand the business, to see the data, to start working with the data, and ask the questions you want for your boss. And then you will start going to meetings, and you will start seeing meetings. And as Kristen said, you will maybe petrified in some meetings, like just seeing the charts there and saying, I have no idea what they're saying. And after several meetings, you will start understanding, oh, this is what I saw in that data. Oh, this is what I saw in the analysis. And then all the pieces will come together, and you'll feel much more comfortable asking questions, presenting stuff to your team and others outside your team. And so this is why it's one of the most important things if you're transitioning, to start with something like a junior position, a data analysis position. It will help you so much in this process of of becoming a business slash scientific person. So I think we have time for some questions if you have right now.
Yeah.
If you can put them in the Q&A section. We have like 6-7 more minutes here with you guys.
And so
Okay.
Fernando asked about what I had mentioned about the finding bugs or errors. How can we address it with our supervisors? And then he goes on to say, because those errors were used to give the clients a solution. So sometimes they're used to give the clients a solution. Sometimes it's our internal data, right? Sometimes, so like raw transactional data is coming in, and the BI team will do like an ETL process to create these tables that we consume. And sometimes it's just the logic in the what we call massaging of that data that is wrong, and it's not necessarily a problem that is affecting external people. Sometimes it's a problem with the tracking and site data. So if I go on a web page and I go from, the home page to a product page to a studio to design a product or something, maybe I'm not picking up one of those pages. Maybe one of those pixels isn't firing or something, or I'm just like not capturing it. There's like just so many different types of bugs. And the thing is that no matter where you are, you're going to find bugs. You're going to find problems with the data. And at some point, like this isn't like a special thing where you're like, ooh, how do I address this? Like at this point, it's just like, yo, I found something messed up with the data. Eventually because like you've got developers too, that their whole job is fixing bugs and working on the software that is the solution that they're giving to clients. There's just bugs everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, has that not been your experience, Fabio?
No, yeah, it is, of course. One of before going into Julio's question, one of the things I want to mention here is you need to have touch. You need to be able to have a different opinion about something, but don't say it if like you're right all the time, and don't say it like you know more than everyone else. That doesn't look good. So and also control your temper. That sometimes you can be in meetings that you're listening stuff that you know they're not true, and you need to control your temper and be able to have a discussion, a good discussion to solve a problem, not just I'm not this and not like this, and just be mad because you will not solve anything. So control your temper.
And I just want to add to that right there, because you may be, if you haven't worked in business before, you may be thinking like, I don't understand why there might be a time where I'd have to control my temper. There will be a time where you will have to control your temper.
There will be.
My God, and sometimes like you'll be working on a project and then all of a sudden they'll be like, this was deprioritized. And then they'll come back to you a week later and say, actually, that's reprioritized. Then it's deprioritized. Then after it was deprioritized, somebody may come to you a month later and say, hey, where's that project? Like, this stuff happens, and so to what Fabio was talking about earlier too, just like in terms of cultural fit, I'm at a point now where like the last job search that I did, I had almost 4 offers. And, the position that I chose was the one where I like actually was going to want to work with those people 40 hours a week. And I knew I was going to feel comfortable asking my boss silly questions. And I knew that I was going to be able to be myself. Which like really makes a difference. And maybe you don't have a ton of options in your first job, but just know that is a thing for you, that will eventually become available to you as you get further down your career. And, to be completely honest, like I had a lot of difficulty controlling my temper in certain situations.
Yeah, me too.
especially, you know, when I was junior and I didn't have as much of a voice, and, you know, I wasn't looked at as, you know, a thought partner on this. I was looked at as more of a person where like they're just going to hand you a project and you have to do it, and like scope would change, you know. And in these interviews now I ask like, what is the, you know, what, first of all, what's, how good is your data? You know, do you have a data warehouse that's set up that's like relatively clean? Are things relatively easy to get at? Or is it like a mess where we know that things are, you know, difficult to get at? They're incorrect in a lot of cases. Like, people will know what the state of their data is, and that can make your job way more frustrating. And there was another point that I was going to make that now I totally forgot, but this is like a heated topic. You know, what crap.
Okay. Maybe let's go to Julio's question and then you can go back to that.
Okay.
Okay. So Julio asks, if I'm coming straight from undergrad and I'm looking for a data science job, would you recommend me to get a master's degree or get the alternative routes to get into data science? So this is one of the questions we get all the time, and it's not a simple answer to this, because different companies will have different requirements for you to get there, and it depends on what you're willing to do. I mean, doing a master's degree, it may be expensive, it may take you a long time, maybe a full time. You may have to be stop working and just go to your master's, and you need to have the will to finish that sometimes. And I mean, I will recommend someone, if they really want to improve their career, to do a master's degree in something related to what they love and they want to do, because it will be easier for you to get a job. But it's not the only way to get a job in data science. I mean, if you have your skills on point and you know how to show them, and you're in a company that will not require you to have a master's degree, or maybe they want a master's degree, but you're able to show them you know all of this stuff, you're okay. But I mean, if you have the time and the money, sometimes do a master's degree. That will be great for your career. And if you have time, but maybe you don't have money, or maybe you don't want to do all of the things that are required to finish a master's degree, maybe just go with a different route, create your portfolio, start working in projects, improve your skills, and you will be great for any job out there.
Yeah, Julio, you can definitely, like, if the question is, do I need to? The answer is no. You can absolutely get like a great data analyst job with an undergrad in economics and work your way up to data science, or you can go and get a master's. And having a master's will benefit you long term in your career, but you absolutely don't have to do it. I thought about the thing that I was missing. So yeah, no, nowadays it's like, what is the relationship between the data team and the other stakeholders? Do we have decision rights in test design? Do we have decision rights in certain things, or do the stakeholders, you know, are they able to, like, how, like, what sense of autonomy do we have? And what that's getting at is really how data driven is your culture. Because if you get into a culture that is not data driven, a lot of times analytics just becomes the, you know, people are going to ask you for things and you give them what they ask. And that's where the frustration comes. Like, that's not where you want to be necessarily.
Yep. Oh, but by the way, I mean, if you really love this stuff and you really want to change some business and you have the position to do that, you can go into non-data centered cultures and try to change them. That's a really big challenge. And if you manage to do that, you're gonna change the life of a lot of people. But if you really want to do data science, like right now, and not spend time like doing internal blogs, meetings, a lot of like tutorials, preparation for other people. If you really want to go there and just work with the data, just work. Try to search for a job that like meets the minimum requirements. that Kristen just said, that you will know you will not be spending all your life and all your hours trying to understand what's happening in the in with the data on or the business and actually doing data science.
Yeah, and I saw that person. There was somebody who, when they said hello, they said, "I'm a, data team manager." And my advice to them is make sure that you advocate for your, direct reports and your teammates so that they don't feel like their voice isn't heard, or if, something like try and get to that point where analytics is known as the center of excellence. They're known as like a trusted thought partner, and they're not just, hey, do you want T-stats with that? Like you want to get to the point where, that relationship between other departments is really you're a thought partner and not an order taker. And that's where you're going to have like better retention.
Story. So let's just get like two more questions, maybe. D'Angelo, he asked, where can I find a junior data scientist position? And I mean, I think the first way to look is Indeed and LinkedIn. A lot of different positions out there. Make sure that when you're applying for a job, first you understand what is the position, because sometimes the title just not means data science really. So read the requirements, read what they're expecting you from you to know. And also, if it's from a different country, try contacting the person who created the job position on LinkedIn maybe, and ask them, hey, do you sponsor visas? Because you don't want to like lose your time or their time. So I mean, I know you're from Venezuela, so ask that, because it's not gonna be an easy answer all the time. But there are job positions that will create for you all of the sponsorship package, and so don't be afraid with that. All right. So from Bianjak, he asked like books like Introduction to Physical Learning and some forms online like Kaggle, HackerRank will help us land a job. I think the answer is yes if you're able to showcase them. Because it's okay for you to get the knowledge, and if that's great, but no one will get at you magically if you have nothing on your resume, if you have nothing on your LinkedIn profile, if you have nothing on your GitHub. It's going to be very hard for you to get noticed out there. So if you're able to showcase your knowledge, that's an amazing way to get a job. Any say on this, Kristen?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I, just 100% agree. So like reading books is great because you'll have that knowledge to bring in, but if you're not able to showcase that, then no one's going to know. So, the things like Kaggle, if you get a good ranking in Kaggle, that can go on your resume. And the problem is that you're not going to put like, I took 20 online courses on your resume, because people don't necessarily respect those in the way that, like you're going to obviously list your degree. Any projects, like if you take part in a competition in Kaggle, even if you don't rank that high, like you can still say like, I increased accuracy over the previous model by X% or whatever, and add that value that you were able to provide on your resume and showcase that.
All right. So we have time for one more question. Maybe from Alvaro Montesino. Want to start that?
Yeah. So what?
Those are great questions, actually.
So can you say it out loud? Because I'm just reading it.
Yeah. So what may be each of you preferred approaches to estimating time and effort, man hours, for each phase in a given project? So let's start with that question.
Okay. So that's tough, because this is one of those things, people say like, oh, I can't get a job without experience, but how do I get experience without a job? This is sort of that, like, I need to be able to estimate the time that it takes me to do projects, but how do I do that if I haven't done any projects? And so this is something where in the beginning, like you're going to talk to your supervisor, like when you're very junior, let them, give you an idea of how long things typically take, or ask other analysts, hey, how long did it take you to do this thing? I'm doing this and I haven't done it before. And then add a week to it.
That's true. I mean, and you need to be able to raise your hand, because sometimes you're not allowed to change, because I mean, sometimes your boss just tells you you have to do this in 1 week. If you are totally sure that you will not be doing that in 1 week, you need to raise your hand. And because you need to say, hey, I've worked in this before, or I have an idea, I asked people here, and there's no way I can do this in 1 week. And it's not gonna be like the best conversation ever, but you need to be able to raise your hand and say this stuff. And so the other question was, do you find when working in different companies that they may have a preferred template for project lifecycle? Which one will be the most common? That's hard one. I think I I think right now, I mean, what I'm seeing in Latin America is that a lot of big companies are using, like for data science development, something like Scrum or Agile developments. And for like project life cycle, they have a validation area where they check the models and they just create a report with all of that. But if they don't have anything, I think you can start using your own one. I can suggest the one that Matt and I created, that you can search that online. So I'm gonna write it here in the chat as Agile Business Science Problem Framework. If you search for that on the internet, you'll find my article when I discuss how to manage a life cycle in the project.
Okay, Fabia's out for water. And so I use Jira. I don't think that there's like, and if you start working in a company that's not agile and you understand the benefits of bringing that agile workflow to the team, like I actually just instituted, so I had previously worked at a company where we were working agile. I started at a new company and everything was fine, and then all of a sudden we had way more work to do than we had people, and somebody had left, and so I instituted a stand-up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we have a physical board and we move our physical tickets over. And that's how I've enjoyed doing it. But it's a lot of trial and error and what's going to work. And, when you're starting your first job and you're going in, I think the thing is to learn what the preferred method is of the business and follow that first. And then if you have suggestions for improvement, like that's great, but don't go in on day one being like, I think we should do this.
That's very important, because sometimes you may think you have the best way of solving things, and it may be the best, but you have to adapt at first and then understand the process and then create suggestions. Don't be the guy that says, we need to transform anything to Spark and you be agile right now. Don't be that guy.
Fabio, day one, we need to go to Spark.
That was my thought in the beginning, like, hey, you need to go to Spark, but now I understand it's not that simple. So lastly, I think, what's the future of data science and what should I focus to be the best? I think the future of data science right now is automation, and if you can check the auto ML packages, they're insane right now. I just view a demo from DataRobot, and I was impressed. DataRobot is amazing. I don't know if you're using it before, but it can do so many crazy things that will take me weeks. So I think right now, one of the most important things that you need to be able to understand the theory, understand businesses, and because this is the things that right now machines cannot do. Machines can do machine learning stuff, but right now, on this day, and maybe in the next few years, they will not be able to transform business ideas and wonders into actual problems to solve. So be focus on that. Keep programming, keep reading books, keep understanding stuff. But the future for me is automation. I think we're gonna automate almost everything in the life cycle of a data science project.
Yep.
And what will be left for us is just to be able to do like insanity checks. Like, is this machine doing the crazy stuff? And if it's not, that's okay. So like I see a lot of like companions in the data science future, like machines that will help you clean data, do machine learning, do deep learning, create features, create reports, and all of that. And you will have to be there and understand everything, so you can be able to say to have a like a sanity check. Oh, this is okay.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Oh, okay, guys. So thank you very very much for being with us today. And I'm sorry if we didn't answer your question. We may have more time later. And remember to go on datasciencelive.com, where you will be seeing the record of this session and all of the past ones. And follow Kristen and I on LinkedIn. We will be posting more upcoming webinars, and new exciting things are happening. All right.
All right. Bye, guys. Have an awesome day. See you next time.
Bye bye, guys. See you.